I never thought I'd set foot in that building again, let alone wearing a name tag with a forced smile printed under it. Honestly, the only reason I RSVP'd in the first place was because of Eric, my old manager. He was one of the few people back then who didn't treat me like I was about to shatter. He reached out personally, said something like, "Come on, Tyler. It's been years. Everyone would love to see you." Everyone. What a word. I still don't know if he really meant it. The venue hadn't changed a bit. Same moody lighting, same fake enthusiasm behind the catered appetizers, same polished white floors that made you feel like you were constantly under surveillance. It was the company's annual mixer, 3 full departments from the Leighton Group all crammed into a hotel ballroom, sipping overpriced champagne and pretending to care what the DJ was playing. I was tucked away toward the back, swirling the condensation on my ginger ale glass, when I felt it, that shift in the air. I didn't see her walk in. I felt her. It was that gut drop sensation, like when you're falling in a dream and jerk awake. Instinctively, I turned my head. And there she was. She wore a forest green dress I'd never seen before. Her hand did that nervous little thing, tucking her hair behind her ear, still the left side, just like always. I'd seen that move 100 times. And for some dumb reason, I thought I was ready. I wasn't. When we were married, her name was Emma Quinn. Most people just called her Em. I used to call her Ember, like the glowing coals of a fire, because she had a way of fading emotionally long before she ever physically walked out. Toward the end, I was starving for crumbs of affection, begging like some guy who hadn't figured out he was already written out of the story. But I had figured it out. Just too late. She hadn't noticed me yet. I could have walked out right then. Made a clean exit. Maybe claimed I wasn't feeling well. No one would have questioned that. But I didn't. And it wasn't pride or anger. It was just exhaustion. I was tired of being the one who always walked away. So I stayed. Leaned back against a cocktail table like I was browsing the event guide, though my eyes kept flicking up every few seconds. She laughed at something a man beside her said, and I hated that laugh. Not because it was obnoxious, but because it used to be mine. I used to be the reason behind that sound. And now? It was like she'd handed it off, like a cancelled credit card number reassigned to some stranger. Eventually, she turned. Maybe she felt it too. Her eyes wandered across the room until they locked onto mine, and then her whole face just crumbled. Not dramatically, not like a scene out of a soap opera. This was worse. She blinked like she couldn't believe what she was seeing, her mouth slightly open, arm lowering as if her drink had suddenly become too heavy. And right there, in a room full of music and laughter and clinking glasses, she started crying. I didn't move. Couldn't. It was like my shoes had fused to the floor. People noticed. A couple folks glanced from her to me and back again, like trying to piece together a mystery they didn't realize they were standing in the middle of. A woman nearby whispered something to her husband and subtly stepped aside. I felt exposed, like someone had peeled back my skin and left me raw. It took her a few minutes to walk over. Even then, her steps were shaky, broken by long pauses like she was steeling herself. When she finally stood in front of me, she didn't say my name. She just whispered, "I didn't think you'd come." I didn't respond right away. My throat was tight, always gets like that when I'm holding back something I'll regret saying. And what was I supposed to say? "You look good. I used to know the rhythm of your heartbeat. I could still recognize your scent from across the room." Instead, I just said the truth. I almost didn't. She nodded like that made perfect sense. But then she leaned in, lowered her voice, and said something that hit harder than I was ready for. "He doesn't know I'm here." I blinked. "Who?" She swallowed hard. "The guy I left you for." I wish I could tell you I handled that with grace. That I kept my cool, let her explain herself. But that's not who I was back then. I was the guy who couldn't even pick the right toothpaste, who stood in the aisle paralyzed between whitening and sensitive because I didn't trust myself to make decisions anymore. I'd become that guy because of her. Or maybe, if I'm being honest, I was always him. She just held up the mirror. I stared at her for a solid 10 seconds, letting her words echo in my head. "The guy I left you for doesn't know I'm here." It didn't add up. Emma never cared for company events, not when we were together. She'd fake headaches just to get out of them. And now she shows up, alone, crying, telling me the man she rebuilt her life with didn't even know? I set my drink down. My hand was shaking just a little. Why would that matter? I asked. I almost didn't recognize the sound of my own voice. She hesitated, eyes darting nervously around the room like she was looking for some kind of escape route. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "Because I shouldn't be here." I didn't say anything. I just waited. She always hated when I went quiet instead of reacting. It made her anxious. I used to think that was just me being cold. Now, I wonder if maybe she was just scared to face herself in the silence. Eventually, she let out a sigh and looked down at the floor. "I know what you're thinking," she said. I let out this bitter little laugh. That'd be a first. She flinched. It was barely noticeable, but I caught it. And maybe I shouldn't admit this, but some twisted part of me was glad she felt it. She needed to understand that she didn't get to just show up again like nothing ever happened. 3 years, Emma, I said quietly. Not a text. Not an email. Not even one of those mass-forwarded memes. You vanished. Like I was some accident you survived. I wanted to reach out, she said quickly, but then stopped herself. I couldn't. I raised an eyebrow. You couldn't. Her voice dipped again. I wasn't allowed to. That made me pause. Allowed. I repeated, trying to figure out what the hell that meant. She looked away, voice small. It's complicated. It always is with you. The bitterness was back in my mouth, thick and sharp. I turned to leave, not for drama, but because I physically couldn't take another cryptic half-truth wrapped in guilt. I didn't make it 10 steps before I heard her shoes behind me, quick and uneven like she was stumbling over every bit of regret. "Tyler, please," she called out. "Can we talk?" I didn't stop. "You're already talking." "I was scared," she said behind me. That's when I turned back to face her. You? You were scared." My voice was rising. "I came home to an empty closet. Found your ring sitting on the sink, right next to a coffee-stained note. And I was the one who had to explain to my mother why my wife ghosted me after planning a damn couple's retreat in Arizona. Don't stand there and tell me about scared." She looked down, shoulders sinking. "I didn't plan it like that." "No," I muttered. "You just didn't care enough to plan anything else." We stood there in this weird silence while the crowd slowly turned their attention elsewhere. It felt like time had folded in on itself, like the two of us had slipped into a memory only we were aware of. "I came tonight," she said finally, "because I thought, maybe I could say it." "Say what?" She looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Not guilt. Not even sadness. Something worse. Honesty. That I was wrong. I laughed again, dry and empty. "About what? Leaving me? Or about the guy you left me for?" She hesitated. "Both." I felt like the air got sucked out of the room. I could hear the AC humming above us, like background static. My chest was tight. I kept waiting for her to add something. To say the guy turned out to be awful. That life had hit her like a truck. But she didn't say any of that. She just stood there, like she wanted me to dig it out of her. So I asked, "What happened, Em?" She took a shaky breath. "He promised me a new life. Said you were holding me back. Told me I'd become dull, predictable. That if I walked away from you, I'd finally be able to breathe again." "And did you?" I asked quietly. "Breathe?" She met my eyes. "No. I drowned." That shattered something in me, not because I wanted her to hurt, but because that hurt used to live inside me too. And now, it was just floating between us like smoke from a fire we never put out. She stepped a little closer. "I didn't come here to get you back." "Then why?" "Because I had to see what I gave up. I needed to see you. I hoped you'd moved on. But when I saw you standing there, Tyler, you looked like you still mattered. Like you still had purpose. And I didn't expect that to hurt so much." I shook my head. "That pain? That's not yours to carry anymore." And then she dropped something I never expected. "I never told him about you. About what I did. About us." I stared at her, confused. "You mean, he doesn't even know you were married?" She shook her head. "No. He doesn't even know your name." I felt my whole body stiffen. Why would you hide that? Because, she whispered, if he knew, he'd know what I lost. That stopped me cold. I stood there, letting the weight of her words sink in. She had never mentioned me. Not once. Not my name. Not that we had a life. A marriage. A love. It was like I never existed. I was a ghost she'd erased, so she could start over without the burden of guilt. And I kept telling myself it didn't matter. But standing there, it absolutely did. I kept telling myself it didn't matter. That her life had moved on, and so had mine. I had my own apartment now, a job that didn't make me miserable, even a cat that didn't judge me when I talked to myself. I'd gone on a few dates too. Most of them fizzled out after I realized I couldn't stop comparing everyone to the woman who'd already edited me out of her story. But knowing she never even mentioned me? That turned my stomach in a way I didn't expect. You think hiding me made it better? I asked, my voice low, steady. Like pretending I didn't exist somehow made what you did less awful? She shook her head and stepped closer. It wasn't about making it better. It was about shame. Shame. I scoffed. When exactly? Before or after you walked out without a word? She looked like she'd swallowed glass. I didn't know how to explain what I'd done, she said. We were together nearly 7 years, Tyler. You were, she stopped, like the next word was stuck in her throat. You were safe. You were kind. You were good. And you wanted more, I finished for her, laughing bitterly. No, she said quietly. I wanted someone who made me feel exciting. Dangerous. Someone who whispered things I wanted to believe about myself. I shook my head, trying to push back the ache rising in my chest. He told me I could be anything, she went on. That I'd spent too long living a version of myself I didn't recognize. That if I left, I'd finally feel alive. And did you? I asked again, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. Did you feel alive? She hesitated, her voice cracking. For a little while. I stared at her. Her makeup was smudged now, her whole expression unraveling right in front of me. Her voice dropped as she continued. He said I was luminous. That I had fire inside me. And that you didn't see it. And I started to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because I was terrified I'd already faded into something boring and forgettable. And what did you get in return? I asked. You traded love for a spark. She nodded, eyes glistening. And sparks burn out. And when they do, all that's left is the dark. That hit harder than I expected. Maybe because for so long, I imagined her new life as this perfect, filtered fantasy. Wine glasses on balconies. Sunset dinners. Some guy with his arm around her waist, while she smiled like heartbreak never touched her. But now? Now she looked nothing like the image I'd built in my head. She was falling apart. And the worst part was, it was all real. It wasn't just the romance, she said. He dragged me into this world I didn't know how to survive. Parties, people who spoke in codes I couldn't understand. Expectations I couldn't meet. I was always acting, always trying to become someone I wasn't. And when you wanted to leave? I asked. She nodded, wiping her cheek. He'd remind me that I couldn't go back. That I'd already destroyed everything behind me. Especially you. My jaw clenched. So, he told you not to contact me? Yes, she whispered. He said if I reached out, it would mean I was weak. That I'd ruin everything I was trying to build. That I had to erase everything about who I used to be. And you listened. I did, she said, her voice barely audible. Even when I missed you. Even when I would have given anything just to hear your voice again. Just to feel human. I turned away, swallowing hard. I waited for months, I said. You know that, right? I do. I saw when you opened my last email, I added. I saw the read receipt. And then nothing. She was crying now, not hiding it. Her mascara left faint streaks beneath her eyes. Her hands trembled as she stood there, completely stripped of the person she tried to become. I know I don't deserve to be here, she said. I know coming tonight was selfish. But when I heard you might be coming too, I had to. I had to see you. I had to know if what I walked away from was still real. It was, I said quietly. It still is. I live with it every damn day. She reached out, like she might touch my arm, maybe hoping a small gesture would erase years of silence. But at the last second, she pulled her hand back. I'm not asking for anything, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not forgiveness. Not a second chance. I just needed to say it out loud. Why now? I asked. She exhaled slowly. Because I think he's going to propose. It felt like I'd been punched in the gut. And you're not sure if you should say yes? No, she said. I already said no. And now, he doesn't know where I am. For a second, I couldn't even process it. She had said no. She had walked away from the man she destroyed our life for. And now she was standing here, alone, not begging for me back, just standing in the ruins. I looked around the room again. The lights. The people laughing about things that didn't matter. I turned back to her and said the only thing I could. You should go. Her eyes widened. Tyler. You should go, I repeated. Before you say something else I won't be able to forget. She looked like she wanted to argue. But instead, she just nodded once. And as she turned to leave, she paused at the door, looked back over her shoulder. I'm sorry, she said. Not for leaving. But for how I left. You deserved a goodbye. And just like that, she disappeared into the crowd. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, completely still, letting the music and laughter flow around me like I wasn't even part of it. But something had shifted, everything had. And deep down, I knew that wouldn't be the last time I saw her. I left about an hour later, after standing in the same spot like some forgotten wallflower. I barely registered Eric waving goodbye. I didn't hear when the DJ started slowing the tempo. I didn't care that I hadn't eaten or that someone had spilled wine on the welcome banner. I just moved, like I was floating outside of time, heading for the exit. The drive home was quiet. No music, no podcasts. Just the low hum of the engine and my own thoughts crashing into each other like loose screws in a toolbox. It was one of those nights where thinking too much becomes dangerous. The kind where you start replaying old conversations, imagining new endings, wondering if anything could have been different. It never is. But we keep hitting play anyway. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. That look when her eyes first found mine and her whole world seemed to tilt. I'd been waiting for that kind of recognition for 3 years. And now that I had it, it didn't feel like I thought it would. It felt empty, like she cried more for herself than for what she'd done to me. Maybe I was being unfair. Or maybe I wasn't. I didn't even know anymore. I just knew I was tired, soul-deep tired. The next morning, I woke up to a missed call. No voicemail. Just the name unknown. Normally, I ignore those, especially on a Saturday. But something in my gut told me to wait. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't block her number. Hey, Emma said softly, her voice hoarse, like she hadn't slept either. I didn't say anything last night. She paused, like she didn't know what to say next. I'm sorry, she continued after a few seconds. I know calling is probably crossing a line. But I don't know who else to talk to. You left me, I said flatly. You burned that bridge. Twice. I know, she whispered. And I'm not trying to rebuild it. I need you to hear something. I almost hung up. Really, I was close. But curiosity is a cruel thing. Once it latches on, it doesn't let go. So I sat on the edge of my bed and listened. He came home last night, she started. I was already back. I didn't tell him I went to the event. Didn't tell him I saw you. But he knew something was off. He started asking where I'd been, who I talked to, why I didn't answer his calls. I closed my eyes, bracing for it. I lied, she admitted. Told him I stayed late at work. That my phone was off for a meeting. And he believed you? I asked. He acted like he did, she said. But then he did something he's never done before. He checked my phone. My heart skipped. Okay. He saw that I looked you up. That I opened your old profile. That I saved that picture from the event site, the one with your name tag. And he lost it, Tyler. Like really lost it. A chill ran through me. What do you mean? I mean, he yelled. Through a glass. Said I embarrassed him. Said if I was even thinking about contacting you, I should start packing. And did you? I asked. No, she said, her voice cracking. I apologized. Promised it was nothing. Lied again. I'm good at that now. I rubbed my face, trying to stay grounded. Why are you telling me all this? Because I need to know I'm not crazy. That I didn't imagine how miserable I've been. That seeing you last night wasn't just nostalgia or guilt. That it meant something. I stood up, started pacing. Emma, I don't know what you expect from me. I just need to know, she said. Have you moved on? My chest tightened. Why does that matter? Because if you have, she said quietly, maybe I can finally start forgiving myself. I almost laughed. You don't need my forgiveness to get on with your life. You made your choices. You left. You picked him. You lied. And now what? You want me to give you permission to feel okay again? Like I'm supposed to just dust off the old version of you and say, it's all right, Em. You're still the radiant woman I once loved? I don't have that in me anymore. Silence. All I could hear was her breathing, uneven and broken. I get it, she said eventually. I really do. I just thought, maybe we could talk. Just once. Without all the old pain. I don't know how to do that, I whispered. I don't know how to talk to you like you're not the woman who tore my heart out. I understand, she said. I'll stop bothering you. I was about to hang up when she added something, barely loud enough to hear. He's not who I thought he was, Tyler. I froze. It started small, she continued. Little things. Controlling stuff, what I wore, who I spoke to, what I could post. Then he started tracking my location. Asking why I had male coworkers. Telling me the person I used to be was weak. My stomach turned to ice. And now, she said, her voice shaking. Now I'm scared to leave the apartment for more than a few hours. Scared to speak without practicing it first. Scared to breathe wrong. I sat back down slowly. Are you saying he's abusive? She didn't answer. But the silence said enough. Have you told anyone else? I asked. No, she whispered. You're the first. I swallowed hard. Emma, I said carefully, if you're in danger. I don't think he'd hit me, she said. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally. I haven't felt like a real person in a long time. And something inside me shifted. I don't know if it was compassion or just old instincts kicking in, but in that moment, I stopped seeing her as the woman who wrecked me, and started seeing someone trapped. Someone I once loved, even if I didn't recognize her anymore. I'm not saying this to open a door, I told her quietly. This isn't about fixing what broke between us. But if you need help, real help, you can call me. Not for closure. Not for romance. Just because no one should have to live like that. She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, she was crying again. Thank you, she whispered. For a moment, neither of us said a word. Just two ghosts on opposite sides of a phone call, mourning something we didn't fully understand anymore. I should go, she said eventually. Yeah, I replied, I'm sorry too. The call ended. Her name still glowed on the screen like a dying ember, burning slow and soft in the dark. 3 years after she walked out, now she was falling apart, and I didn't have the first clue what I was supposed to do about it. 3 days passed. No calls. No texts. I figured she went back to him. Or maybe she talked herself out of the guts it would take to leave. I tried to focus on work. Cleaned. Picked up that book I'd been reading for months. Did anything I could to distract myself from the sound of her voice in my head. But then, on the 4th night, my doorbell rang. It was just after 9, and it had been raining for hours, one of those soft, steady rains that feels like the sky is just too tired to do anything else. I wasn't expecting anyone. No food delivery. No friends dropping by. I checked the peephole. There she was. Soaked. Shivering. Clutching a duffel bag like she didn't know what she was supposed to do with it. Her eyes were swollen. Her shoulders slouched. She didn't look like the Emma I used to know, not really. Something about her posture. She looked smaller. Like she'd folded in on herself. I opened the door. Said nothing. I left, she said, barely above a whisper. I stepped aside. She came in slowly, cautiously, like she wasn't sure if she even belonged. I handed her a towel. She nodded, dried her face in silence. Her eyes scanned the apartment. It's different, she said, voice low. You've never been here, I reminded her. She hesitated. Right. We sat across from each other on the couch, not touching, not talking, just breathing in the heavy silence. I couldn't do it anymore, she finally said. I packed my bag while he was in the shower. No note. No warning. I just left. I didn't ask why she came to me. I already knew. You can stay here tonight, I said, still avoiding her eyes. But just tonight. She nodded. Okay. She looked down at the floor, as if bracing herself for rejection. I don't expect you to fix anything, she said. I don't even know if I expect forgiveness. I didn't know where else to go. And again, I said nothing. I just sat there, next to this person who had once been my whole world, and who now felt like a stranger borrowing space in my living room. She eventually curled up on the couch, pulling her knees close like a kid hiding from a thunderstorm. I covered her with an old quilt my grandmother made, the same one she used to love when we were married. Then I turned off the lights and went to bed. I waited for something in my chest to lift. Some release. Some clarity. It never came. She was here. But I didn't know if I wanted her to be. That scared me more than anything. The next morning, for a brief second, I forgot she was even there. The sun came through the blinds like it always did, soft, pale, untouched by the emotional wreckage it lit up. Then I heard it. A cabinet closing in the kitchen. Reality hit like a splash of ice water. I stepped into the hallway, barefoot, rubbing the back of my neck. Emma stood by the counter wearing one of my old hoodies, the navy one she used to steal back when things were good. Her hair was messy. Her face was bare. And for a moment, she looked almost normal. Like she belonged. She turned around. I made coffee, she said. Then added, I remembered how you like it. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched as she poured it carefully into the chipped mug I've used since the day she left, the one I never replaced. She handed it to me with both hands, like it was heavier than it really was. I took a sip and gave a small nod. Thanks. We stood there for a moment, awkward and quiet, like old classmates forced into a reunion neither of them wanted. Eventually, I sat at the table by the window. She joined me. I didn't sleep much, she said. Me either. She tapped her fingers along the rim of her cup, nervous. I kept thinking about what you said, she continued. About how I left. How I erased you. I didn't say anything. You were right, she added. I did pretend you never existed. Because if I didn't, I would have had to look at what I did. It was easier to treat you like a mistake. Like a phase I grew out of. But you weren't some phase, she said. You were the only person who really saw me. Even the parts one tried to hide. I muttered, you say that now. She nodded, accepting it. I deserve that. I do. She took a breath. Back then, I said all the right things to justify it. Told myself I was evolving, outgrowing the life we built. That you were holding me back. But the truth? I just wanted attention. I wanted to feel like I still mattered to someone. I set my cup down. You don't need to explain it all over again. I lived it. She bit her lip, leaned forward. I never asked what happened to you after I left. Fair question. I didn't want to answer, but some part of me needed her to know. Not out of revenge, but because I was done pretending like I came through all of this untouched. I crashed with my cousin for a while, I said. Couldn't afford the rent on the house. Couldn't stand the way it still smelled like your perfume. Sold the car we picked out together because the empty passenger seat made me sick. I took a job that didn't fit me, started therapy, cried on the train more times than I want to admit. She looked down, her hands trembling a little. I added, and eventually, I stopped waiting for the sound of your key in the door. That was the hardest part. Emma wiped at her face. You're a better man than I deserve. Maybe, I said. But that doesn't mean I know what to do with you now. She was quiet for a beat. I don't know what I want from you either. I'm not trying to rebuild what we had. That version of us? It's gone. I'm just trying to feel like a person again. Someone who still matters. That hit me harder than anything else. Because beneath all the pain and silence and betrayal, I saw it, clear as day. She was broken. And maybe, in my own way, I still was too. I stood, rinsed out my mug. You can stay a few more days. She didn't say thank you. She didn't cry. Just nodded. And somehow, that meant more than anything else she could have said. As I watched the rain return outside, I honestly didn't know what this was. A beginning? A delayed ending? I just knew something in both of us was shifting. Emma didn't leave the next day. Or the day after. I kept telling myself I was just giving her time. A safe place to breathe. But truthfully, I didn't want her to go. Not yet. Not without some sort of final chapter. She didn't overstep. She cleaned up after herself. Stayed quiet. Read a lot. Scrolled through her phone like she was afraid of being in the present moment. We didn't talk much, but there was this unspoken understanding that what we had now was temporary, fragile. On the third night, I came home late and smelled garlic before I even stepped inside. She'd cooked. Just pasta. Way too much garlic, like she used to make it. She was barefoot in my kitchen, stirring noodles like we hadn't missed 3 years in between. I didn't want to assume, she said, but I figured you hadn't eaten. I nodded stiffly. Thanks. We ate quietly. Across from each other, barely making eye contact. I caught her looking up every now and then, like she was checking to see how much of me was still mine. Halfway through, she set her fork down. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I stayed? I hesitated. All the time. She nodded. I do too. Her voice didn't carry hope or longing. Just wait. I ruined us, didn't I? I stared at her for a moment, then answered honestly. Yeah, you did. She didn't argue. Didn't cry. Just let the truth hang in the air between us like smoke from a dying fire. After dinner, I started cleaning up, but she came over and gently took the sponge from my hand. Go sit, she said softly. I've got this. I watched her for a second, then did what she asked. But even as I sat on the couch, the same question repeated in my head. If she asked to stay longer, would I let her? And if I did, what would that make me? A week passed. Emma was still there. Sleeping on the couch, wrapped in the blanket like a shield. She never once asked to sleep in the bedroom, and I never offered. We were careful. Like we were handling glass with hairline cracks that could shatter with the wrong word. But something was shifting. I heard her laugh again, not the fake kind she used in meetings, but the real one. The laugh I hadn't heard since late-night cartoons and burnt toast mornings. It was still in her. Buried deep, but not gone. And me? I didn't flinch when I smelled her perfume. I didn't tense when she unlocked the front door. I didn't feel like a ghost in my own home anymore. Then one quiet Sunday, she sat across from me on the couch, knees tucked to her chest, holding her mug in both hands. I found a place, she said. It's small, but it's mine. I nodded. That's good. I move in next week. I just sipped my coffee. Waited for that sting in my chest to return. But it didn't. I wanted you to know, she said. I'm not leaving because I'm lost. I'm leaving because I need to figure out how to stand on my own. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw it, someone who had finally stopped running. You're not the same woman who left me, I said. She smiled, gently. I'm trying not to be. We sat there in silence. But it wasn't heavy this time. It was calm. Peaceful. Then she reached into her coat pocket and slid something across the table. It was her wedding ring. The original one. Not the one I found on the sink that morning she left, but the one I gave her. In that vineyard in Vermont, with trembling hands and a voice full of hope. I kept it, she said. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I didn't touch it. Just stared at it, remembering who we used to be. And yet, instead of feeling angry, I felt thankful. Thankful that I survived. And maybe so had she. I think we did the best we could, I finally said. Even when it wasn't enough. She nodded. Thank you. For letting me stay. For not hating me. For still seeing me. And what I said next, I meant it more than anything I'd said in years. I forgive you, Em. Her eyes welled up. But she smiled. Then maybe I can finally forgive myself. When she left that afternoon, she didn't cry. She didn't look back. And neither did I. But we did hug, the kind of hug that says thank you. I'm sorry. And I hope you'll be okay. She walked out into the cold with her coat zipped up, keys in one hand, and her life in the other. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. We didn't go back to what we were. We didn't pretend it never happened. We let go, gently. And sometimes, that's the most hopeful kind of ending there is.